Um,
Hello, everyone.
yeah, awesome. Hey, Oscar, you want to show people how this video player works?
Yeah, so here today we are building a media player from scratch based off of pure JavaScript. We made our own custom play button, mute button, and seek slider. Here on the left, we can show that the seek slider is working. Anytime I click on a different designation, and the player will start from there. The play button works, and we have no volume in here, but the mute button works as well. And then on the side, as you can see, we have our duration for the video on how long the video is and the current time as well. I just need to make this little box a little bigger, and then from there, everything will fit in its own little container.
Cool. Let's see. Can you go through how it works?
Yeah. So this is the HTML file that we are using to manipulate. Here we have the div for the video player box, which holds the video with its own controls. And here we have the video with its source, so we can have the video on its own. And then we have our control bars, which have the play button, the mute button, the current time, and then the seek slider, which is the little bar that navigates.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting you to use one of those new fancy input types like range. It's fun.
So that's what is giving the display on the HTML, and then this is what's making it work. So we are creating variables for the video, the button, the seek slider, the current time, the duration time, and the mute button. We are making the function as initialize player, and then in here we are giving the vid the element of get element by ID, which is the video, which is the video itself. And then for the play button, we are getting play button as you can see, for the play pause button.
Oscar, one way to summarize what you're doing there is just for every single element on the page, you are retrieving it and getting a local JavaScript variable that points at that element.
Okay.
You have a reference. If you want to do something to the play button, like listen to when someone clicks on it, now you have a reference to the play button, so you can actually do that. If you wanted to change the HTML of the play button, you could also do that with that play button variable.
Yeah, so that's what these are. These are all our set object references, which I have the little comment up above. So these are our references, and then right below we have the event listeners, which makes everything work. So whenever you click on something, you click on the seek slider, or you click on the video, this is what's calling the event listeners. And then here we have window on load, the onload, which is we're gonna wait for the entire HTML to load up first, and then when everything is done loading, then the functions come in, and that's when the JavaScript starts to work.
And onload, just so you know, that will fire not only after all HTML has loaded, but all images and all content have loaded as well.
Okay. And then we also have the other function, which is for the pause button. So of course, if the video is paused, we have the button saying if the video is playing, I'm sorry, if the video is playing, the inner HTML will say pause. Else, if it's not playing, then the video will say play.
Mm-hmm.
And then for here, we have the function for the video seek, which is where we want to find out where we want the video to start. It's going to be seek2, which is the duration of the video times the seek slider, and the value of the seek slider is 100. And then from there, we're going to call it with the current time, and then we're going to give the seek slider the duration where we want the seek2 to go to. So that is what the current time would equal to, if I explained that right.
All right, yeah.
I'm sorry. And then the seek time update is where it keeps the current time. Here we have the variable, which is the current time, which is going to be times 100 because of the duration. So we're doing a little bit of math here. This took me quite longer than it should have. We're keeping track of the minutes, the seconds of the current time, and then we're going to keep the duration and the duration seconds so people know how long the video is and the current time as well. And then down here, we have the function for the mute button, where, of course, if the video is not muted, it's going to be false, and it's going to be the inner HTML for the button is going to be mute. Else, if someone clicks it, if it is clicked, then the mute button will come true, and then the HTML will turn into unmute, so people can know that the video is muted, and then you could unmute it.
Cool. So the next thing that I asked Oscar to do is to take this code, which is it's a good like starting point if you were just kind of hacking around an HTML page, but to make it a little, what I would call a little bit more industrial strength. In a few ways, I'll probably eventually ask you to try, Oscar, but the first way was to make it so that there's kind of a problem with this code is that you can't, it's not very reusable. If you wanted to have other video elements on the page, you couldn't reuse any of this code because it's all hard-coded to the IDs in the HTML. So if you go back to your HTML page, you'll notice that like Oscar here is using the play button. It has an ID, play, pause button. Well, you can't have multiple buttons with or multiple HTML elements with the same ID. So this code is just very like coupled to the HTML and can only really work for that HTML. So the goal, what I talked with Oscar, and then we're going to kind of talk about, try to convert to doing, is to make it so that instead there's like a function that we can call on a video tag, and it will create the play pause button around that video element. And then if he had multiple video tags on the page, for every single video tag, he could create a brand new video player for it, and it would be kind of like its own self-contained area. So do you want to go to your start, Oscar, where you started trying to get that to work, and then we can work through
Definitely.
Work through that problem.
Yep. So this is the new media player file.
Before you do this, Oscar, let me share my screen, and I'm going to go through that thing I talked with you last time about. So one thing that one thing that I showed Oscar here is kind of how to do this a little bit. Let's say I have this input element, and I wanted to basically put a box. I want to put a blue box around it, and I want to put a button next to it, right? And I wanted that to happen when I called Oscar widget. So the idea is I would get my input element, input 1. Using document query selector, which gets elements by selector. It should have really been input 1. If I got that input element and I pass it to Oscar widget, I would want it to change the HTML as if it had a div around it and had a button before it. I'll make the button just say hi for now. Because this is basically a big part of what Oscar's widget needs to do. Let's say the border would be style border solid and blue. Okay. And there'd be a blue border around it. Mm-hmm. Right. So we just got a normal input element, but we want to convert it to have HTML like this, right? How can we do that? So my HTML doesn't look like this. It's going to start like this. Someone's going to get that input element, and we want Oscar widget to change it. So here I'm going to implement Oscar widget. And this is where learning how to manipulate the DOM becomes very important. So we're going to get an input element passed to this. And what we want to do is create that wrapper div first, that wrapping div. So I'm going to create a div element with document create element. Creating that div. And then I'm going to put what I want is the inner HTML except for the input element. It's going to be everything but that. I'm going to specify what should be inside the div element. So I want the div element to have a button that has hi in it. Now, the final thing I need to do is I need to get this input element inside the div, and I need to get the div to replace where the input was. So before I actually take the input and put it inside of this div, I need to put the div right before this input element. The way that you would do that is I would get the input's parent element, which is going to be the body. And then I can use this parent insert before. I want to insert it before the input element. I want to insert the div before the input element. You can see here now I've got that button showing up. Now if I inspect the DOM, let me put a blue box around the div here. Okay, you can see the DOM right now. I'm not taking that first input element and putting it inside of the div, but I have put the div before the input element, and it has a button inside of it that says hi. Right? So just recap, I'm kind of creating my little area. This could be like the play pause button. I can create the slider, everything. And then the final piece is I need to move this input inside the div. To do that, I can just do div.append child input element. Now, you can see the input element is inside of the div. So I'm really, again, I'm creating a wrapping div element. Then I put the div element before this element, and then I take before the input element, and then I put the input element inside of the div. Right? This is a very common approach to what a lot of times is called progressive enhancement of the DOM. It's like you let people write your HTML like this, but then you progressively enhance it to do all of this other fancy stuff with JavaScript. So now this works. If I wanted to make the second input an Oscar widget, I can just, now it's wrapped it twice, but we don't want that. I'm just going to get the second input element, input 2, and now both of them are wrapped. So this is the concept that Oscar's going to be using to clean up his code. So let's go on to yours now, Oscar. Talk about how we finish your widget off. Okay, so here, Oscar set up the div and set up the inner HTML. Now, the one thing is you're going to want to remove, so you're not getting the parent element, you're actually going to get the video element. So I would call your argument to make Oscar player video. Or like, yeah, video element or something. And now what he's doing is he's creating that wrapping div. Now you're going to want to get rid of where that video, you're going to want to get rid of that video tag inside that inner HTML, because that's going to be the video element that you're putting inside of the div. Does that make sense?
So the video element is going, so that's what I did. I'm removing the video element inside the HTML and putting it as the argument. Is that correct? Is that
well, yeah, what you're doing is that same like kind of that inside out mutations that I was doing. You're creating the outer div, but then you need to take that video element and put it inside the inner div.
Okay.
But you can't just like, yeah, you got to do that kind of after you've set up your kind of initial HTML inside that div.
Definitely.
So a few other things. Well, actually, first, you might want to, Oscar, click on in the Google Hangout on your video.
Yeah.
Now, because then it won't switch to me while I'm talking. Because people want to keep looking at your code from this point forward. No reason to get a big close-up of my face at this point.
How do I do that?
You see on the bottom right corner, it says your name.
Okay.
You just click on that box, and it should put a white border around it.
Yeah, it's on there.
Okay, good. Okay, so the next thing is we don't need that extra div. See, you have that we don't need that line 4 div because you've pretty much created it on line 2 anyways.
Okay.
We don't need like a div inside of a div inside of a div. So we can get rid of those divs. Yeah. Okay, the next thing we want to do is make all of those IDs classes. So it's really while Oscar's doing that, it's really a bad idea to use IDs because there can only be one of them on the page, and it makes your code not reusable. So using classes is a much better way of doing things almost all the time. So you've got one more on line 4. So now what you want to do is actually, you want to insert the video element inside of that div. So on line 11, it's actually backwards.
Backwards in...
Well, you were taking the parent, which used to be the argument, and adding the div inside of it. You want to do the opposite. You want to add the video element to the div. Yeah. Now that's good. Now there's going to be a problem, but we can see that later. Essentially, this is going to make the video after all of the controls. You'll want it before, so you'll want to use that insert before. But don't worry about that right now. Let's just get the basics working, and then get rid of that initialized player, because we can copy and paste that in later, but just get rid of that for now because it's not doing anything anyways, and we're not going to need it. Make sure you end your function curlies. The ending bracket for the function is gone.
I'm trying to figure out where this one.
It could be on line 12. Okay. Now, go to your HTML for this page. So what we want to get is we want to actually put a video element in this page, not a player element. We want a video tag. So
inside the div, right?
Just straight in the body.
Just straight in the body.
Get rid of that other div. And we want to make sure it's got a source tag that it can load some video.
Inside or in between?
Inside. No, sorry. I would say a source attribute.
Okay.
I meant that. A source tag inside looks like this here. Okay. Now, do you have a video actually here in
yes.
this project?
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so that should work. Oh, I see it. Okay.
Yep, there it goes.
So now go back to your, now after line 13 here, create another script tag, this time with no source, just script, and then inside there, call Oscar video player or whatever, make Oscar player. And then we want to pass it that video element. So give that video element an ID. An ID is all right here. So on line 9, give it like ID, like video 1 or something.
And how come we're using IDs on this one?
That's a good question. Why it's more okay here? We'll talk about that in a second. There are places where it's okay to use an ID when you know it's going to be global anyways. But we don't need to worry about that right now.
Okay.
I'll explain later. Anyways, we want to get that video element and pass it to the make Oscar player.
It would be vid1, correct?
No, well, yes, you can actually do that because the DOM supports that, but I always find that a very weird way of doing things.
Okay.
I would prefer either use query selector or get element by ID.
Okay. And that would be here, right? Query.
Not there. You're passing the video element to the function, so it would be inside the parentheses. So you would do like document get element by ID, something like that. And then vid1. Okay. Do you see what this is doing?
Yeah, I'm calling the function inside the HTML, and then I'm targeting that ID. And
what
then
you're doing is you're getting that element, a reference to that element, and you're passing it to the make Oscar player.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now let's open up this page and see what happens. Okay, it might be broken. Let's open the dev tools. Okay, so parameter 1 is not of type node. So can you click that? It should be able to take you to that line if you hit the console and click on script. It should take you to the line that actually broke. Hit that line 11.
Yeah, line 11. But...
Oh, get rid of that other line 13. We want to get rid of that line 13 because we're doing that in the HTML page.
In the HTML page or the...
We are doing what is on line 13 in the HTML page. So get rid of this in there. No, but in script.js, see how in line 13 it was trying to like invoke and create the video player? We're already doing that in the HTML.
Okay. Okay.
But we don't want that there. We're just like, you can think of it as like we're loading a library in our HTML page. It's loading the make Oscar player function, and then we're using it inside that HTML page.
Okay, so now it's completely broken.
Okay. All right, that's fine. It's because we didn't actually put the, okay, so I know why it's broken. It's because we created this div, we put the video element inside of it, but we never actually put the div in the page.
What do you mean?
Well, the div we created, but we never actually put that div in the page. Like.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. So we're not yet
it's connected. It's not like it's just floating around in free space. It actually should be put inside the document for it to actually be visible.
I have to target that, right? I would have to do. Do I have to do another variable or no?
No. So if you remember from the example I showed you, what you do is you add that div, but right before the video player.
Right before the video player. And
No. You add the div in that function.
Oh my goodness.
So let's take a look here. Let's take a look at my JS bin again. You want to click on my screen, and I'll
yeah.
Let me share my screen. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yeah, you have the var div, and you're creating it.
Okay, so I'm creating. Let's say if I didn't do this line,
okay,
everything's gone. And if I do this line, well, then the input element is removed. But so I create the div, I set up its inner HTML, and then I have to put the div back in the page, right? If I don't do that, let's get rid of some of these lines here. Okay. Okay, so right now my body just has those input elements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I put that input element into my div, now the body isn't going to have anything, right? It's going to be empty. There are no input elements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to still keep them around. Now the problem is I need my div into the page so that this button shows up, right? It needs to be part of the page. So what I'm doing is I'm getting the input element that was passed. I'm getting its parent element, right? So each one of these input elements, it has a parent. Its parent, in this case, is the body.
Okay.
You can always ask, and the body, what do you think the body's parent is?
HTML.
HTML, exactly. So I'm getting the parent element because that's what you need to, be able to insert elements. You kind of insert elements as children.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is I want to insert the div before the input element within parent. So that's why the DOM now looks like this. The div is inserted before the input element.
Okay.
And you're kind of inserting them with inside body. So that's why you kind of need these three parts. You need the parent element, and you're kind of always inserting within children, and you give the reference child and the element that you're actually inserting.
Okay. So I would be parent.
Yeah, you might want to click on your screen now so it shares your screen if it's off of mine.
The parent insert.
Insert before, but you need to get the parent. How do you get the parent of the video element?
The variable. Gotta make a variable. And we're gonna call it.
Its parent node is the property.
I have to put it in quotation marks, or no?
No, so it's video element dot parent node.
Video dot element.
Video element. No. Everything there was right. You're creating a parent variable, but you want to point it at the video element's parent node. Video element dot parent node. Okay, so that is video element. So if the elements have all of these properties and methods, like add event listener is a method on elements. So is parent node.
Okay. And then from here I have to insert it now, right?
Yes, now you insert the div inside of the parent node. Insert before.
Insert.
And now it's the node that you want to insert, which is the div, and then the reference. What do you want to insert it before? You want to insert it before the video element. Exactly right. So now you've just put this div into the DOM, and then you're going to take the video element and put it inside the div.
And okay, so the first one is going to be what I want to put it in, and then it's going to be before.
What you want, where you want it before, yeah.
Okay.
It'd be nice if there was like jQuery has like a before method that you can just say like insert this DOM before this other one, and then it will actually like do the parent and then call insert before for you, which is nice. But the DOM makes it a little weird to do that. So now look at your controls are at the top. Now, why is that?
Okay, let me look at the code.
Looking at your HTML will not help you here.
No? Okay.
No, because you're doing everything in JavaScript. So the video element is appended at the end of this container div.
It's supposed to be on top.
It's supposed to be on top. You see how you're doing append child?
Yeah.
That's going to add the video element at the end of the div.
Oh, and there's another one for before, right?
Well, we already used insert before once, and we can use it again.
Okay.
Okay. So I think this will do the same thing when you refresh. It'll look the same because you're using insert before. Insert before, by default, if it's not past a reference, if the reference node, that second argument is null, it just does the same thing as append child. It doesn't insert in the beginning by default. So you need a reference element. So you need, which element should this be inserted before? Inserting the video element, so the first argument should be the video element.
So the first one, okay.
But what should be the? But where should it be inserted before? Which element?
The div, shouldn't it?
Which div?
The video's control bar.
Yes.
So then I would use that class.
But how?
Inside the single quotes, correct?
No, you can't use a class. You have to actually give it an element. You have to give it like an element reference.
So I have to make another variable for that?
You could, or you could just get that other element. So the way you can, you have query selector, right? You could do div dot query selector.
Oh, okay.
And then in quotes dot video controls bar. So what this is doing is it's saying like, okay, I want to insert this before the video control bar. Now your control should be at the bottom of the page.
Okay, I see it.
Cool, it worked. Now, so that the video player doesn't take up the whole screen, let's just go to your HTML and give it like a width of, 400 or 300 or something. Cool. All right. So now, good. We've got the start of, what we've done is made it so if someone just passes a video element, you can call Oscar widget or whatever it is, and it will build all of this other HTML around it. But none of it works. So we got to make it work. Okay, so now let's listen. Now we're going to kind of move your old code into this, where we've got to start listening on those elements for clicks and things like that. Right? So we can just put this after line 14. But we need to then get the right variables and things like that. But we can paste it. We can just start with it pasted. Okay. Okay, so this is where you were asking me a question earlier.
Yes.
Now, putting those variables there is the wrong spot.
It's the wrong spot? Okay.
Do you have any idea why? It's okay.
No, I don't. I don't know why.
So that creates only one video variable. And every time someone were to call make Oscar player, you would effectively be trying to reuse that same variable, and they would overwrite each other.
Yeah, that's what you were explaining to me the other day, correct? That you wanted me to put them all together so they could be reusable?
Yes. So what you really want is those variables defined inside this function.
Okay. So I could just copy and paste them inside the function, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would put them on line like 17 or 18 or something. I would put them, yeah, right about here is fine. Okay. If possible, I would clean up your indentation, but whatever. Okay. All right, so now we've gotten the play button. Okay, but so now we've actually got to get the play button, right? We've got to go get a reference to the play button that we just created. between lines 6 and 12. How are we going to do that?
I would have to make another query selector for the class play pause button.
So let's do that. Well, you want to do this after your variable has been defined. Okay. So you wanted you're trying to do it with the document, right?
Okay.
What the problem with that is it's going to find if someone else somewhere else in the document had a play pause button.
Yes.
It would find the first play pause button in the page.
Oh, right. So I'm supposed to be grabbing it from the jQuery. I mean, from the JavaScript, not
from the container div.
Okay.
So that's where you can do like we did in line 6, div query selector all. You can query selector from the div, and then you'll only get the play pause button within that div.
From line 6.
Yep. See, we also did in line 16. Pretty much the same thing.
Oh, yeah, right. Correct. I'm sorry.
You want a dot before it. So it's a CS at this class selector. Yep. Now this is going to return you your play button. So you would do play btn equals this.
At the beginning, right?
Yep. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes. No.
I don't think you've got your functions all wired up yet.
Okay.
So now you need there's probably errors. If you want to see if it worked, I would comment out line 23, 24, and 25. Comment those out, because those are just going to create errors anyways. 23 to 25.
What's the shortcut?
You want to keep 22. You want to keep 22. Just comment out those 3 lines.
Okay.
23, 24, and 25. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Now we need the play pause function. So let's copy the function from down below and put that back in the page.
Oh, wait, I thought that's what we just did.
No, the function. You see, you're on line 22, you're calling the play pause function. You're wiring it up so that on click, it's going to call this play pause function, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we need that play pause function then.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so
do I throw it inside the same function, or
let's look at paste the function. Now look at it's got vid.paused. Well, here, if you put it here, we can learn about scopes later. Like this can be our next video. That vid reference, like let's just do this. Just do this. Leave it like that, and save it, and then just try to hit the play button in the page. Well, always have your debugger open whenever you're, looking at stuff. Okay, see how it says vid is not defined?
Oh, okay.
That's because it can't see that vid variable. Can you go back to your code? It can't find that vid variable because that vid variable is defined in that function, right? It's only available between lines 3 and 26. Right? It's not available there. So if you move this function, this whole function inside the other function, then it is available. If you paste it in here, now it is available. So now try doing it again.
Okay.
Okay, but now we need to fix the paused. There is no paused button. So it's trying to call, what is it? Oh, there's no vid element. Even in here, right? We didn't actually find the vid element either.
No, the vid has not been.
So let's find the vid element. Let's get the vid element. Actually, the vid element is the video element, right? So you can just change your function to just on line 29 or whatever, just to use video element. And same with line 30 and 33. And 30.
Oh, sorry.
Did you change line 30?
It's amazing how you could read the code that quick. There we go.
All right, it's working.
So the play pause button is working. Cool.
Yeah, none of the other ones are. Now you can. We'll probably call it here.
Yeah, I think from here. I think I'll be able to take care of it.
Now there is also one other problem that I think it's useful to be aware of,
okay,
that you would want to fix if you're really making this professional quality, which is look at what happens. So hit play on yours. So hit play, let it play, and you should be able to right-click the video real quick and hit pause. Oh, maybe not anymore. Just hit pause again, or hit right-click, and let me see what's in those menu options. Okay, just do show controls. Okay. Now hit pause and play or whatever, so it's going to play the video again. You can see how your pause button and hit stop it. Stop it.
Yeah.
Controls. Not your pause button. Hit the other one. Hit play and pause. Just watch, and then keep hitting play and pause. Notice how your play and pause button doesn't actually stop.
Yeah.
Right? That's because the way that you wrote your play button is it doesn't. If somebody else were to start that video, someone else were to call video start or stop or whatever, your buttons don't actually adjust with the state. They are in state is probably one of the most important concepts of UI programming and how to deal with it. What you should do, what people eventually do, is instead of your play, on click, call, toggle, what was your function called? Go back to your code. Your play pause. Instead of play pause, also updating the HTML. Instead, what your play pause button would just call play or pause. And what you should be doing instead is listening to the video element, because video elements actually tell you when they're play or pause. There's events that you can listen to on a video player, right?
Yes.
I think, were you already doing that a little bit in your example? I don't know.
But what you're saying is that when I click on the video's standard controls, my controls should be working as well.
They should be working as well. And the way to do that is what you should be doing is listening to when the video emits events.
Okay.
When it is play or pause. And that's when you should be updating the control. You're showing either play or pause in your buttons.
Okay.
That's the better way of doing it, because then, like, who knows what other functionality or how someone might be able. Sometimes, like, some browsers just let you touch the video element, and that will play and pause it.
Yeah, but that's what I noticed right away when I first tried the video.
Oh, so it was already you noticed it was kind of broken in that.
I already noticed that. Like, oh, how come when I click on the video it doesn't pause?
Yeah, it doesn't, exactly, because it's not calling your play pause functionality. So instead, what you need to do is you just tell the video, hey, you call pause or play, and then the video would emit an event, and then you would use that event to toggle the inner HTML of your play button.
Okay, I see what you mean.
So once you get that concept, then, like, the world becomes your, well, there's still, that's the most fundamental, like, paradigm shift of how I think beginner programmers need to think when they're building. In some ways, these two things. One is, can you structure your code so that it's more reusable, which we just did. And then the two is, how do you manage state? And if you get both of those things, you can really build things in a very robust way. And then there's a billion APIs to learn, but you will be writing things in a way that isn't going to screw things up later down the road if you're building a big application.
Okay.
Cool.
It's easier. I see what you mean.
Awesome. So give that a try.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Justin, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Um,
I
did,
will get back to you probably later today to show